All right, so we're diving back into Bill Cara's work this week with his Global Markets Week in Review. And seriously, if you haven't checked out BillCara.com yet, you are missing out.
Yeah, it's a treasure trove of information.
Definitely is. So this week, we're taking a look at Week in Review number 4, and like, whoa, comparing it to week number 3, it feels like we've stepped onto a whole different planet.
You know, it's a dramatic shift, right? We went from like really deep economic theory and analysis to like a full-on geopolitical thriller almost.
Yeah.
Trump 2.0's policies, I think, are shaking things up.
It really feels like Bill Cara is saying, hold on tight, everybody, because things are about to get wild. I mean, you look at those tariffs, 25% on Mexico and Canada, 10% on China. It's aggressive. And then he's making these moves on Greenland, the Panama Canal.
It's a lot to process, for sure.
It's no wonder the markets are reacting the way they are.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to see how those reactions have kind of evolved over time. There was this initial bullishness, maybe, fueled by the economic optimism from week number 3. But that quickly gave way to a lot of volatility and concern as those tariffs really started to loom large.
And then Friday afternoon, that sell-off across the major indexes.
Oh, yeah. That was rough.
It was a clear sign that investors are starting to get a little spooked, right?
Definitely. And even though some of the indexes are still showing gains, Bill Cara is pointing out some underlying weakness, like take the advanced decline ratio, for instance. It's been declining, which means we have fewer and fewer stocks propping up those gains. It's almost like a house of cards,
Okay, yeah.
Looks impressive from afar, but maybe not so stable when you look closer.
And then you throw in Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, saying, World War III has already begun. Talk about a statement.
Right. I mean, it definitely gets your attention. And some might say he's exaggerating, but Dimon doesn't really have a history of making outlandish claims.
No, he doesn't.
What's striking is how he's saying that these geopolitical tensions are a bigger, more immediate threat than even climate change.
Wow.
That really underscores the level of risk we're looking at right now.
It's definitely a wake-up call for investors. So let's look at some specific sectors and how all this global turmoil is playing out. Industrials, for example, they're getting kind of a boost, at least for now, from those lower interest rates. But Bill Cara is warning that they're super vulnerable to that tariff-driven inflation and, possible supply chain disruptions.
For sure. And then there's the tech sector, which has been doing so well for so long. It's now showing signs of weakness. Especially companies like NVIDIA and Apple, they're facing more and more competition from China.
And Bill Cara, he really calls out real estate as being particularly at risk here. He's saying rising material costs, because of those tariffs on Canadian lumber and cement, they could really hit profits hard.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. It's like a domino effect, right? One little policy change can trigger this whole cascade of consequences across all these different sectors, even national economies. And speaking of, national economies, Bill Cara really digs into the Canadian situation, talking about the risks and what could happen because of these tariffs.
Yeah, it's a really good example of how intertwined everything is, especially the U.S. and Canada. Bill Cara reminds us that 6 million American homes are relying on Canadian electricity. If that gets messed up, it's a big problem.
Right. And beyond just energy, there's a real possibility of a nationwide strike here in the U.S. because of supply chain issues, especially in those big industries, automotive, aerospace. They rely so much on that back and forth across the border. If that gets disrupted, the whole economy feels it.
It makes you think, doesn't it? These tariffs, they're meant to protect domestic industries, but they might actually end up hurting them in the long run. And it sounds like Canada's not just going to sit back and take it either. Bill Cara talks about how united the Canadian politicians are against these tariffs.
Yeah, sounds like retaliation is definitely possible.
Which, of course, would make things even more tense and volatile.
Oh, absolutely. It's like this high-stakes game of economic chess. It's hard to say how it's going to play out, But I think it all goes back to that main theme that runs through Bill Cara's analysis. We got to be careful, do our homework, especially now that things are so unpredictable globally.
Absolutely. Bill Cara is really urging investors, especially those thinking long-term, to be super cautious right now. And when it comes to investing internationally, like you said, due diligence is more important than ever.
Right. He's not saying we should pull out of international markets completely. In fact, he still thinks there are good opportunities out there globally. But he's emphasizing how important it is to really understand the risks, the rules of each market, especially now with all this geopolitical stuff going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. He's particularly wary of investing in China right now. with their economic issues and the trade war with the U.S.
It's a tough situation.
Sounds like the risks might outweigh the rewards at this point.
Yeah, but, it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay.
Bill Cara does point out that emerging markets have some potential, at least for those who are willing to really research and take a calculated risk. It's all about striking that balance between risk and reward, and for that, you need a deep understanding of what's happening globally and a long-term vision.
And speaking of long-term vision, Bill Cara reminds us that market cycles are a natural part of things.
Yeah.
We're in a rough patch now, but it's not going to last forever.
Exactly. And even amidst all the uncertainty, there are always opportunities. Like, he points out how well gold miners are doing, for example.
Yeah, classic safe haven play.
Exactly. It shows that some sectors can actually thrive, even when things are crazy globally.
So out of everything in Weekend Review number 4, what really stood out to you? Like what made you go, aha, and rethink your own investment strategy?
I think for me, it was that reminder that everything's connected, Geopolitical events, economic data, market performance, it's all part of this one big, complex system. If you want to navigate this new market reality, you got to understand those connections.
Totally agree. And Bill Cara's analysis really helps us see those connections and then make better decisions, right?
Exactly. And I appreciate his honesty about how he's evolving as an investor, too. He admits that sometimes it all feels overwhelming, but he's also excited about trying to figure out these complex global issues.
Yeah.
It reminds us that learning is a never-ending process, even for the experts.
It makes him seem more human, more relatable. It's not about knowing everything. It's about asking the right questions, and being able to adapt to this world that's constantly changing.
That's a good lesson for everyone.
So before we wrap up, another shout out to Bill Cara. His Global Markets Week in Review is amazing. We can't recommend it enough. Go check it out at billcara.com. You won't regret it.
It's a must-read for anyone trying to make sense of the global markets and, just make smarter investment choices.
Couldn't agree more. So if we had to sum up Bill Cara's message from Week in Review number 4, like in one sentence, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think it'd be something like, stay informed, be prepared, and don't be afraid of new opportunities. Because in this world, everything's changing so fast, you got to be able to adapt.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Bill Cara's Global Markets Week in Review number 4. Big thanks again to Bill for sharing his incredible insights. Seriously, if you haven't already, head over to billcara.com and sign up for that weekly newsletter. It's a must-have if you want to really understand what's going on in the global markets.
Totally agree. And to all our listeners out there, don't forget to subscribe to NotYourAdvisor.com for more deep dives just like this. We're here to help you navigate the crazy world of finance and investing.
Until next time, stay curious, and remember, knowledge is power.